Chairman. Thank you, Director, for being here to address this very important problem. Just to make sure I understand the issue here, what we're talking about is not some kind of extraordinary surveillance, not something that's unknown to the user of a device, but encryption technology that would thwart a lawful court order that has been taken in front of an independent federal or state judge by law enforcement authorities to get access to data, and then you go to a company and that company says, sorry, we can't provide you this information because we have designed a system in a way that prevents us from accessing it.
That's correct. Or with respect to a device that's locked and the same judge issues a search warrant and they tell us we can't open it because we designed our system to make the phones, we cannot unlock them.
And this is the Intelligence Committee, but I know you testified in front of the Judiciary Committee this morning. This is an issue not just for terrorist operations, but I would presume also for things like child molesters, child pornographers, sex traffickers, kidnappers. Is that correct?
Yes, this is an overwhelming issue in local law enforcement and prosecution, especially the data that's on a device that can't be opened, because they tell me that's a feature of all of the cases you mentioned, as well as domestic violence, car accidents. The information on there can show you who the bad guy is, also tell you someone's not guilty. And so it's very important in all their work.
In one of the recent congressional recesses, I spent some time at the Little Rock field office for the FBI. And first, I want to commend the agents and employees you have at that field office there for their dedicated public service. It was a very important afternoon for me. They specifically brought up the going dark issue and the way it has thwarted their operations to keep Arkansans safe. Furthermore, I was able to see in their lab an effort they had made to get access to a locked device. And they got access, and it actually allowed them to recover a young girl who had gone missing. But they said that that was rare and that they were fortunate they were able to do it. I think that's just an example of what I suspect is the case, is that in your opinion, in all 50 states of our union, is this an ongoing problem for both federal law enforcement and local law enforcement?
Yes.
Do the companies with whom you deal in private settings appreciate the fact that the technology that they are creating and marketing is being used by terrorists and some of the most heinous criminals in our society?
They do, and it bothers them, which is why I think we're starting to have more productive conversations, because they're good people.
So we're not the only society to encounter this kind of problem, of course. And one argument you hear from American companies is that they need to compete in the international market because most people don't live in the United States. Have you taken a look at how countries like, say, the United Kingdom or France have addressed this issue?
Yes, they're both grappling with it. They're both a little bit ahead of us. They both have passed legislation that, as I understand it, will require providers to give access, again, with appropriate authority in the course of investigations. So they're grappling with it just as we are. Everybody who cares about the rule of law and public safety, it has to grapple with the same thing.
So about 20 years ago, this Congress passed something called CALEA, the Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act, saying in the old days, essentially, on telephones, that telephone companies had to provide the ability to let law enforcement, with a lawful court order, put in a wiretap. Could you look to CALEA or maybe what other countries have done to address the Going Dark program with data encryption as a model for this Congress to act?
It's possible. I mean, it's one of the things that's being talked about. Is that a model that can be adapted to deal with this challenge? And so we're still working on that.
Okay.
Well, by us, I mean not just in the government, but I think private sector has to be part of that conversation.
Does the executive branch yet have legislative proposals that they are prepared for this Congress to take under advisement?
Not yet.
Is that because you're continuing to work with some of these companies to try to develop the technical, legal, and policy frameworks?
Yes. Just as I think we all do, the President sees the problem, sees that these two things we care about tremendously are intention and that it's a really hard problem. And so he's commissioned a whole lot of work on different streams, but one of them is to figure out what legislation, if we decide to go that route, would make sense, and to get the input from the private sector. And so what would work for you folks?
Well, thank you very much, Director, for your testimony. Thank you very much for what you represent, the tens of thousands of agents around the country who keep us safe on days like the 4th of July and every day. I just urge you and the men and women with whom you work in the executive branch to get us that kind of proposal as quickly as possible. We all recognize the tension between trying to protect data, which we want to do for American citizens, but also ensure that law enforcement has the tools they need, not just to stop terrorism, but stop the most heinous kinds of crimes imaginable in our society.
Senator Coates.
Thank you.